Matthew chapter 7 verses 13 to 28. It might be a series as well, what I want to just begin teaching. And most people, I believe, can ask this question. What is true conversion? What's a genuine conversion? What's a real conversion? How can we determine that someone is really, genuinely, truly born again? How do we know? How can we identify that person is really, really genuine in their faith, in their walk with God? They are truly converted. Their conversion is real. So Matthew chapter 7 verse 13 to 28 is a very wonderful teaching. And Jesus was just teaching his disciples here. And he says, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad and easy to travel is the path that leads the way to destruction and eternal loss. And there are many who enter through it. Underline that word, many who enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow and difficult to travel is the path that leads the way to everlasting life. And there are few who find it. So two categories. Many who enter through it. Few who find it. And I love the fact that he says, when he says many who enter through it, unfortunately, it's a path that leads to destruction and eternal loss. And also the fact, something that comes out of here is, it is easy to travel in this path. Easier. Easy choice. But when we look at the other comparison, who few find it, it says it is difficult to travel that path. Let's continue. He says this. Jesus was telling them, beware of the false prophets or teachers who come to you dressed as sheep, appearing gentle and innocent. Wow. So one way to identify these guys, they are appearing to be. They're not gentle, neither are they innocent. They appear to be gentle. Someone who comes to you appearing to be gentle and innocent, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. That is by their contrived doctrine. When I speak about contrived doctrine, it means engineered doctrine, manufactured doctrine, orchestrated doctrine, and self-focus. It's all about self. Talk about the spirit of Lucifer being portrayed right there and then. Do people pick grapes from the thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Even so, every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the unhealthy tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Therefore, by their fruit you will recognize them as false prophets. Then he goes further and says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day. When is that day? When I judge them. Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, and driven out demons in your name, and done miracles in your name? Three things: prophesy, cast out demons, doing miracles. It's more of outward appearance. Don't you see that? Three things. And then I will declare to them publicly. I will declare to them publicly. What he's saying here, I will declare to them publicly. I never knew you, because what they did was public. So because it was public, Jesus has to declare to them publicly, I never knew you. You are banished from my presence, disregarding my commands. Or what other version says, depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. So everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man, meaning far-sighted, practical, and sensible man, who built his house on the rock, and the rain fell, and the floods and torrents came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish, stupid man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods and torrents came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell, and great, complete was its fall. Wow. When Jesus had finished speaking these words on the mountains, the crowds were astonished and overwhelmed at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one who had authority to teach entirely of his own volition, and not as their scribes, people who relied on others to confirm their authority. That is Amplified Version. It's just amazing when we read the scriptures and it just comes alive to us. So what am I saying here? Be on the look, brother. Be on the look, sister. Be on the look, you young man, you elderly person, you young lady. Be on the look. We see Paul gives his final instruction to a group of elders from the church in Ephesus. When you read Acts chapter 20, verse 31 to 32, it says, therefore be continually alert. Wow. Remembering that for 3 years, night or day, I did not stop admonishing and advising each one of you with tears. And now I commend you to God. What does he mean by saying, now I commend you to God? He says, I place you in his protective, loving care. And I commend you to the word of his grace, the counsel and promises of his unmerited favor. Why? Because his grace is able to build you up and to give you the rightful inheritance among all those who are sanctified, those who are set apart for God's purpose. These are all believers. Very interesting. John Carson says this word. He says, if a shepherd only warns the flock but never feeds them, they will die of malnutrition. If the shepherd only feeds the flock and never warns them, he is simply fattening them up for the kill. So you should do both. Feed and warn. In the Sermon on the Mount that we've just read, Matthew chapter 7, the good shepherd both fed and warned his flock as the masses gathered around him on the hillside. Jesus, our great shepherd, chief shepherd, good shepherd. You can read the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, Matthew chapter 5. And I want to just break it or simplify it like this, some snippets on that. Jesus began talking about, number one, the pathway to happiness. His first words were, blessed or happy are the poor in spirit. Happy are they who mourn. Happy are the meek. That's the pathway to happiness. Humility. Humble yourself before the mighty hand of God and He will lift you up. 1 Peter chapter 5. Humility. Number 2, it talked about the highway of holiness. So not only the pathway to happiness, but the highway of holiness. Many people thought they were pretty good and fairly holy because they did not commit murder or adultery. But Jesus took the standard high. He explained to them that if they were angry and with their brother without a cause, they were guilty of murder. If they had looked at a woman with lust in their heart, they were adulterers. And the standard was set high. You think you're good? A good teacher, a good Lord is there. Such teaching will drive people to realize that no one is holy, that all are sinners, and that everyone needs a Savior. In fact, the book of Romans, Paul addressing the Romans said, in this flesh, nothing good dwells in it. Nothing at all good dwells in it. Its desire is just to always commit sin because we are fallen beings and in a fallen world. Man, you can't defeat that except by the grace of God and the mercies of God. So not only did Jesus talk about the pathway to happiness and highway to holiness, but also taught the broad way, which is Exodus. Concluding his sermon with this sober exhortation, there are choices we must make concerning the right way and the wrong way. There are choices you and I have to. So I'll just break this Matthew chapter 7 into, I believe, 3 portions. The first portion is there are 2 gates that are being mentioned here. Narrow is the gate that leads to life, and broad is the way that leads to damnation. You've got to make a choice. And the wrong choice will be Exodus to eternal status. Look at John chapter 10, verse 7 to 10. It says, therefore Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. So when Jesus is addressing them and telling them, narrow is the gate, he says, it's me. I'm not complicated. I am the gate for the sheep. So if you want to be part of my fold, my sheep, I am the gate. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. Psalms, I believe, is it 100 or 97? But it talks about we are the sheep of his pasture. We belong to him. He feeds us, he guides us, he leads us, he protects us. So whoever is in the fold will listen to Jesus. Whoever is not in the fold will not. It says, the sheep have not listened to them who have come before him as thieves and robbers. So Jesus is the gate. When he says narrow is the gate, it is Jesus. I am the gate. Narrow is the gate. Jesus is. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. John chapter 10, 7 to 10. Jesus is that narrow gate. Is that narrow gate. So there are 2 gates. What's your choice? Today, if you're listening, do not add in your voice. Add in your heart. As when you read scripture, you realize the children of Israel, some of them had in their hearts. They did not receive salvation. It led to destruction. So I'm praying that you do not have in your heart when you hear this. Number 2, there are 2 trees, as also mentioned in Matthew chapter 7. So not only are there 2 gates, but there are 2 trees. When you're wondering whom you should listen to or receive from, check out the fruit. Even as I'm teaching right now, it's important to see Solomon's fruit. Whoever you choose to listen, Very important. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. So watch out for deception. The first one I was telling us, you have a choice to make. And then watch out for deception. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 30 says, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. Speaking about Jesus, Jesus himself is a tree of life. And out of him proceeds or produces righteousness. He carries righteousness. And we are part of that. We are part of the fruit that Jesus produced. We as believers. Revelation chapter 22 verse 2 says, and in the middle of his street, on either side of the river was the tree of life. Jesus is the tree of life. Bearing what? 12 kinds of fruit. Yielding its fruit every month. How do we know, people? How do we know? How can we check them out? Or how can we check our lives as well? Are we bearing the fruit every month? This is what it says. Yielding its fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nation. The leaves of the tree were for healing of the nation. I believe Jesus himself is the balm of Gilead, as the Bible mention of him. And in him there is healing for the nations. So when you and I tap into it, you and I tap into him, we carry forth healing as well to the nations. So how will you know a true prophet of God, true servant of God, when within them they carry healing for the nations and bear his name? John chapter 15 verse 1 to 8, it says, I am the true vine. So there are two trees here. And one of them, of course, we know is Jesus himself, the tree of life. And he speaks about himself. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every one that continues to bear fruit, he repeatedly prunes so that it will bear more fruit, even richer and finer fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have given you, the teachings which I have discussed with you. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. Just as no branch can bear fruit by itself without remaining in the vine, neither can you bear fruit, producing evidence of your faith, unless you remain in me, unless we are grafted into Jesus. We as the branch are grafted into that tree, the tree of life. We cannot produce healing to the nations. No. Neither can you bear fruit, producing evidence of your faith, unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him bears much fruit, for otherwise apart from me, when you're cut off from vital union with me, that's what he says, you can do nothing. When a branch is cut off tree, it can't produce anything. That's a fact. If anyone does not remain in me, he is thrown out like a broken off branch and withers, dies. And they gather such branches and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, that is, if you're vitally united and my message lives in your heart, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified and honored by this when you bear much fruit and prove yourselves to be my true disciples. Well, you've seen two trees, you've seen two gates. Next time, we'll see two foundations from the book of Matthew, chapter 7, from 13 to 28. Tune in for the next one. God bless.